your brother said, well, before I could say anything, how can you remember that?
I am Cantor Sarah Sager, Cantor Laureate of Congregation Mishkan Or, and it is my privilege to be here with Rabbi Robert Nosenchuk, who is our senior rabbi, and to participate in this loving and, at one level, celebratory tribute to Ruth. Just weeks ago, after hearing from granddaughter Jamie that Ruth was in hospice care at Hillcrest and was not expected to live much longer, I went to visit her. Not knowing what to expect, I somewhat anxiously walked into Ruth's hospital room. I was immediately greeted with an exuberant "Hineni," or, in English, "Here I am." As a student and lover of Jewish learning and culture, Ruth knew that Hineni was the response of the chosen few in our mythic history, such as Abraham and Moses, who were called to service directly by God. The response, Hineni, has always indicated a willingness to accept whatever challenge awaited, to go forward into an unknown future, to apply all of one's gifts to the challenge of living a meaningful, impactful life. Even in hospice, Ruth's response was, Hineni, here I am. In a paraphrase of the popular song, dying was definitely not on Ruth's mind, or her agenda, or her list of things to do. Last Friday, as she was laboring to breathe, and clearly in the process of retreating from this world, she still rallied with the arrival of a visitor, the melody of a song, the comings and goings of her family. She was not interested in dying. She seemed to be interested only in what each moment might bring, as she had been all of her life, and what she might bring to each moment. I had the great good fortune to know Ruth for the last 44 plus years. She and Victor were loyal, involved, devoted, and proud members of our congregation and community. I came to know Ruth's sharp wit, her probing intelligence, and her challenging questions when I worked with her towards the accomplishment of her adult bat mitzvah, which was an absolute thrill for her, and through her participation in our women's Torah study class, which she loved and hated to miss for any reason. In fact, I remember that if she did have to miss a class, she always told me why, and that she was truly reluctant to do so. Some of the feminist interpretations of our sacred text really captured her imagination and spoke to her sense of gender equality and justice. She was one of those people whose very presence always made me happy. A bit of a character, she was open and forthright. She spoke her mind and didn't much care what anyone else thought. She was refreshing. She always made me think and respond thoughtfully, never automatically. She was a Hineni presence every day of her wonderfully full, rich, purposeful, and impactful life. As Ruth easily and naturally invoked the wisdom of our tradition and of our sacred texts, so have Jews throughout the centuries turned to those texts at moments of loss and sorrow such as these. The Psalms in particular have always offered solace and comfort, as well as strength and inspiration. We turn now to Psalm 133, where we find, in memory of her Hineni approach to life, the familiar Hine Ma Tov. We are here, Hine, family and community together, grateful for the goodness of her life and what will be her enduring blessing, and what will be the enduring blessing of her memory. I invite you to join with me. Hine ma tov u'manayim sheret achim gam yachad. Hine ma tov u'manayim sheret achim gam yachad. הנה מה טוב שבת אחים גם יחד. הנה מה טוב שבת אחים גם יחד. הנה מה טוב ומה נעים שבת אחים גם יחד. הנה מה טוב ומה נעים שבת אחים גם יחד.
Adonai mi'agur ba'ohalecha mi'yishkon b'har kodechecha, God, who abides in your house, who dwells in your mountain. Those who are upright, who do justly, and who speak the truth in their hearts, who do not slander others or wrong them or bring shame on them, who scorn the lawless and honor those with reverence, who give their word and come what may, do not retract, who do not exploit others, who never take bribes. Could the psalmist have described Ruth Wertheimer better? Those who live in this way, the way in which Ruth lived, they shall never ever be shaken. Amen. El Harachaman, sweet God, you've taken a precious one from us. There is lamentation, and indeed, you're right, Cantor, there is so much gratitude as well. There is much good that we have received, and she gave good too. But there are tears, there is loneliness. Ruth's love united people in life, and death cannot sever that. Her companionship continues now through the tenderness of memory, the gifts of her heart, and her mind, which stayed sharp and shrewd, and she never withheld what was on her mind either. We give thanks. We give profound thanks. In this time of grief, we listen to the voice of our scriptures. It brings us an ever new message of God's nearness and of the community's kinship with us. Psalm 23. I invite you to join with me. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He maketh me to lie down in green pastures. He leadeth me beside the still waters. He restoreth my soul. He guideth me in straight paths for his name's sake. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me. Thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. Thou preparest a table before me in the presence of mine enemies. Thou hast anointed my head with oil. My cup runneth over. Surely goodness and mercy follow me all the days of my life. I shall dwell in the house of the Lord forever. Amen. Ata imadi, thou art with me. That faith proclaimed by the psalmist is a source of consolation today to Ruth's family. I know how much it means to have you here with them. All of you who are physically present, those who are streaming, all of you sending reflections and memories and standing at their back. You should only know it means a great deal. At the conclusion of our service, in a short while, we will continue with a service of interment at Mayfield Cemetery, and the family will receive guests for Shiva at Congregation Mishkan Or at 26000 Shaker Boulevard in Beechwood from 6 till 8 p.m. this evening. Tomorrow afternoon from 11 until 3. And of course we'll be continuing to reflect on and remember Ruth at many upcoming remembrances within the family and within the wider family of our community. Mourning for her, but all the more so, richly savoring all that she meant to us. I should be clear, as it was in the handout that was given to me. in lieu of flowers. She didn't want flowers. She wants you to give a gift to Planned Parenthood. 2, if possible. Are we clear? Excellent. This is the time when the clergy typically lifts up a formal proverb or aphorism that conveys the path of someone who died. And most of the time I do just that. Instead, I want to share that it was close to a decade ago at Mayfield Cemetery that Ruth walked up to me after a funeral on a much warmer springtime day, pointed to the ground, and said, "You're going to do this for me, too." I didn't get the sense that she was asking a question. Hineni. I nodded my assent. I gotcha. I adored and appreciated, admire, and I miss already the direct and clear conveying of matters of substance that was a trademark of the way Ruth Wertheimer communicated to me, to my colleague Kenner Sager, to others with whom she shouldered responsibility, offered her time, volunteered her insight, energy, creativity, gifts of substance, and thought to our synagogue and to so many. It's not as if I'm saying that because she was all serious. To the contrary. The woman's boisterous laugh and affectionate outreach to friends and even to strangers with a smile, it was a sight to behold. I personally am not as much for noisy crowds. But perhaps since she and her Victor, quite swiftly, I might add, in 6 years' time, created a crowd of boisterous, joyful, loud, loving kids who bring their friends, and they made more friends. And if it were Thanksgiving or another holiday, anybody could join. Corner of Shaker and Brainerd, Ruth wanted the more the merrier. You got a pet to watch? Want to bring along a puppy or even a bunny? You owe me $10. Bring them over too. And later in life, but not too late, came the kids of her heart, her in-law children, her children in love, her grandchildren. And did she tell you that there are 2 great-grandchildren? I'm just saying she knew how to handle herself, getting her words in and her guidance and example set in not an easy crowd to get a word in. God, she loved and so loves you. Her dearest ones, and she is so proud of who you have become, your lives, your ambitions, the things you've tried and the things you tried to kid her about trying. To sit with her and her loving companion, Greg, at her side at Hillcrest a few weeks back, was to give her an audience. And I learned the ins and outs of your achievements, again, with full-throated pride, as though she hadn't within recent days traveled by ambulance in the middle of a heart event to begin the process of setting aside hospital care and returning home for the comfort and love of dear ones. We grieve today, we do, but we are also grateful she no longer has to wait. She felt, in some ways, ready to put a period at the end of this sentence. But don't you dare think she won't be looking through your eyes at the joys yet to come when you add 2 more periods so that ... her legacy, her recipes, her intense interest in your life's pursuits, the opportunities we who survive her have to fix so many of the problems left in the world she had left. As we take our deepest sympathies to those for whom Ruth was their family matriarch today. We grieve with Jeffrey and Jody, Roger and Lori, Susan and Rick, Judy and her Michael. Ruth would kill me if I even took another second without mentioning the names of the people that she admired most in the world, her grandchildren. I now speak of Hannah and her Justin, Lauren, Julie and Holden, Rachel, Jesse and her Brandon, Max and Jamie, Joe and Brooke, Eli and Hanako, and let's not forget Sadie and Bo, who will sure to be tell stories, some of which are not appropriate to share around them yet. About their great-grandma and great-grandpa. But one day, Ruth loved literature, fantasies, science fiction, and classics, Jane Eyre and Jane Austen. She studied nonfiction too, attended classes at Temple, speakers, always conveyed the two convictions in her heart and about what was said and left unsaid. I admired that about Ruth. In a few weeks, we'll host at our Temple author and Rabbi Sharon Brous, who has written a marvelous book called The Amen Effect. Rabbi Brous in the book describes the struggle to convey to someone experiencing a loss the meaning of reciting the mysterious Kaddish prayer that we'll say at graveside this afternoon. Apparently, a young man being counseled by her was despairing, and the only thing he knew was he was needing an anchor for his grief. But when he looked up the translation of the Kaddish and found there a declaration of unshakable faith, well, it hit him like a gut punch. So Rabbi Brous reflects in her book on how hard the Kaddish is to speak. It's written in Aramaic, the vernacular of an ancient community. So everyone who recited the words would understand then, but not only do most of us not have an adequate Aramaic education, but the actual syntax can also turn us away and alienate. Several years later, Rabbi Brous realized the purpose of the ritual. The cryptic prayer's purpose is not to study or contemplate it. It doesn't matter if the mourner catches the subtle biblical reference or linguistic nuance. It doesn't matter whether they're drawn to confident belief in a God. What matters is it gives the opportunity to a person who is hurting a chance to stand up and reveal their hurting, out loud and in public, and for the community to respond, as Ruth did when Kenner Sager entered the room. Hineni, I'm here. I see you. It's like something out of a screenplay. I share this message today as a way of intention setting that corresponds to Ruth's life and the values that she gripped tightly, even as she bravely refused resuscitation or heroic efforts, and clutched instead to memories of better days that weren't actually very far back. Surely, when Victor died in 2009, a piece of her heart went with him. But she turned to the many friends and beloved ones, family, and most especially to the children in her life, especially her daughters, who saw over the last decade and a half of her life a more curious and playful and tender side to their mom, who came from a generation of Jewish moms who weren't always at ease letting go of judging. Unless you were a male child, in which case the term messianic might be appropriate. She came to new understandings, though, and confessed on the regular how much she admired the way in which her kids had found the right people with whom to spend life, people who brought the yin to their yang, hope to places that they needed to heal, and adventure and light to their eyes. They found partners in different ways and eras than she was Victor, and they also saw over recent years the way their mom's heart opened with joy and her eyes alerted every several hours for regular check-in calls from her boyfriend, whom her time has included playing bridge, going to the playhouse, enjoying singing and laughing and dining together. She'd laugh at me for calling her vertically challenged, but as far as I'm concerned, Ruth had stature. What she stood for and what she wouldn't stand for. I knew because she would tell me when she didn't particularly care for something I said, or when I missed the mark. I also relished that more often than not, she found what she was looking for, something substantial, important and valuable and insightful, in a commentary that I might offer, or blessings about which we sing. COVID-19 meant I saw her less in person for a while, but I still heard from her and knew she was Zooming or streaming and was anxious to come back to our spiritual home on Fairmount Boulevard. Honestly, she was not so anxious to come to Shaker Boulevard and start a whole new merged temple, but she talked all of this through with me in honest, unvarnished ways, and with a recognition that it is best to elect a change instead of being forced into it. Teachings that guided her to the bravery of which she showed just in recent weeks. I think that's how she earned stature. She told people she knew her doubts, and she also told you when she believed in you. Since she died a great-grandmother, it's hard to imagine she was once just someone's kid sister. The third of four kids of Clara and Herman, born in Brooklyn, New York, the 29th of June in 1934. Her siblings all meant a great deal to her. She conveyed to her sister her sister Edith conveyed to Judy. Wait a minute, what did I just write here? Sorry, that's why I got confused. Wrong word. Conveyed to her she conveyed to her daughter Judy in an exercise of creating a life's journal and book that early in childhood she loved fairy tales. As a young teen, though, she took interest in baseball, volleyball, with her brother Hal and other sports. She was a voracious reader. Though she was raised the first few years in Cleveland, her father's work took them to a much different Jewish community, with a fair degree of anti-Semitism in Perry, Ohio. For the most part, it was the girls in Perry who mistreated Ruth as a Jewish young woman. She loved then, and let's be honest, still loved, that men, and at that time boys, really didn't care her culture, her faith, or community. They found her beauty in her heart and on the surface. Her open mind, her gorgeous eyes were fuel to their hearts. One of the things I learned in my office yesterday is the grit and independent-mindedness and bravery it took for Ruth. She became the first college-educated one in her family, which included taking very long-distance bus rides from her home to Columbus to study for work as a dental hygienist. And she carried off her responsibilities with high standards for herself, but faced unique obstacles, doing so without unique role models to show her how to get it done. But she long credited her sister Edith with encouragement and confidence in her. In her career, she took very good care of patients, relished being able to talk twice as much as they could while she cleaned their teeth. She was glad to keep an eye on her own kids' teeth and gums, but I'm told that she also made it known that she wasn't always happy with what she saw in there. How many sweets or cigarettes or times that they said they flossed when maybe they missed. Except apparently Jeffrey, who legend tells could do no wrong. Never missed a centimeter of surface of his teeth, not a molar or bicuspid. The dentist alongside with whom she worked appreciated her strong ethic, her amiability, her chemistry she had with everyone around her. That made everyone at ease. The story goes that she met Victor at a party for singles that her sister Edith was hosting, but Edith warned her there was a guy coming that was both too old and too short for her. This is why I like her so much, just like me. Being told she couldn't go somewhere made her walk right up to him. She went to him with a 12-year age gap, her fresh into her 20s and he in his mid-30s, an accomplished attorney with many friends who were already married and beginning families, and they very quickly fell in love. He no doubt fell first. 3 weeks into the relationship, the flowers he sent addressed her as the future mother of his children. By the September that followed, the two of them committed their lives and values and futures together down the street from here at the Alcazar Hotel, Cleveland Heights. They honeymooned in Vegas, where she just told me this fall, actually, and you reminded me yesterday, that she met Frank Sinatra. The real one, in person. She was a bit out of place among Victor's friends' spouses, but soon she made a squad of her own. Friends, lots of them, but also friends with children her kids' ages. Their home at 26721 Shaker was treasured as a place for friends to come and hang out. Traditions of Judaism were celebrated there, blessings on Shabbat. Setting aside sacred time is woven into this family's sense of meaning. It remains that way. Her recipes, especially the noodle kugel and apple pie, and the instructions, somewhat smudged by food on the card, concluding with the instruction that after you eat, you better call home, has become a mantra, held preciously and very closely to the hearts of all of her descendants. Guys, if you don't realize it, one of the main things people do after your grandparent dies is feed you at Shiva. Eat what you can, don't fuss too much, but always be at home with the knowledge that you are and always will be healthy, supported, and loved by this woman. But you gotta floss before you go to bed. Are we clear? Okay. And call home. Your grandma approves of each child and grandchild and great-grandchild brought in through marriage with you. I promise it's a lock forever. One of your parents said to me yesterday that when you face dilemmas now, as you contemplate that even the best of our years includes troubling and sorrowful moments, on all these occasions you'll be asking yourself, what would Ruth do? It doesn't mean you're going to follow her recipe exactly for a life well lived. You'll do her honor, though, by thinking and reflecting critically and not with automatic imitation. In case you were wondering what was the secret sauce she poured into the mixing bowl of her life, her character, her esteem, her principles, she was very clear about this. It was her grandchildren and the people that her grandchildren brought into her life. You mattered to her, no matter anything else you ever doubt. Ever. She wants you to be kind and loyal and expects nothing in return. You matter. That's what makes her the person we heard about when they rest no more at our side. And so I pray, may you be seen in your hurt. May each of us be comforted in our grief. Ruth Wertheimer died, but before that, she lived. She followed life's path habitually, dutifully. She made her own dress to get her bags together, get on a bus, and go to school. She made a life and a family. She gave gifts. She was thoughtful and charitable with words and substance. And as I reminded you earlier, she wanted all of us to improve this world. We'll do our best homage to her 9 decades in our presence by living most fully in the shadow of her loss. And I remind you, by giving a gift to Planned Parenthood this afternoon. At this time, it's my honor to continue this loving set of tributes by inviting her children, Susan, Judy, and Roger, to each come forward and share their thoughts and reflections.
Hi, everybody. I was instructed to breathe first. Okay. Mom, whose body left us yesterday, was a force of nature. She had a big heart and was the funniest person I knew. I have no doubt her spirit will continue to fill each of our hearts with her love, her laughter, and her straight talk. Mom and I for years had a complicated relationship. What happened in those years, though, is not our story. Our story demonstrates the willingness to love each other in spite of each other. Mom gave me support, showed up, and trusted that I would be okay. As the years went by, we found comfort in each other, and laughter connected us through everything. In the end, I'm so glad Mom lived long enough to become my confidant, my daily source of laughter, and a true friend. I look at life and have realized that Mom shaped my journey in subtle, impactful ways. She never told me to listen, but I always heard the messages loud and clear. These are some of Mom's words of wisdom to me and the messages I'll always carry. She would say, if you're not happy with me as your mother, tell a therapist, I don't want to hear about it. Mom's message, I did the best I could. A doctor once told me I'd never be able to have kids. I called her at work, I was crying, and she yelled, stop crying, the doctor's an idiot, of course you'll have kids, and hung up. Mom's message, impossible is not an option. When I was sick, she would say, get up, change your sheets, open the windows, take a shower, and go to school. Mom's message, get over it and get going. Mom always told me that before I got married, I should have a career so that I can support myself. Mom's message, be self-reliant. When I got sober, Mom told me that, she said, that didn't come from my side of the family. Mom's message, don't blame that shit on me. Dinner was family time and mandatory. Mom's message, the family's not the same without you. Mom would honor the Shabbat every week. Dad would toss the challah. Mom would make an amazing dinner. It was filled with our loud family, lots of laughter and tradition. Mom's message, being Jewish is special, celebrate it. When Rick and I got married, Mom gave Michael a trophy for introducing us. Mom's message, thank God. Mom was a doer. She showed all of us the formula for life, to fully participate. Mom strongly believed in tradition, loyalty, and speaking her mind, loudly. She held strong beliefs and was not always open-minded unless you were open to what her mind said. Her activism wasn't just about cause, but it was also about people. She believed in fairness and justice and speaking up. Mom taught all the women in our family to never be second class, and action matters. Mom's kitchen was where she nourished both body and soul, a way of bringing people together. Whether it was her famous fried chicken and corn fritter or Thanksgiving dinner, Mom was always an outstanding cook and threw the best parties. Her life was a masterclass in resilience, humor, and how to turn simple moments into something hilarious and special. No one was like Mom, complicated and simple, tough and huggable, critical and supportive, judgmental and accepting, on the go and on the couch. Mom loved her family, Judge Judy, Greg, Bridge, her friends, talking politics, and Trader Joe's chocolate. Mom, people tell me I'm just like you, and now I know to just say thank you. You were one of a kind, and I'll miss you every single day. This work gets hard. I will miss our daily phone calls and how hard we laughed. You made a difference in my world and in me. I will carry your passion and your fire forward always. This last month, Mom told stories of her life, her friends, and her family. In the end, she left us with these words, I'll be back. I didn't say it, I'll be back. That's what she really was saying. And I know we will forever see her in little aspects of every day and will continue to carry her with us. One would be lucky to have a mother like you and equally lucky to have a friend like you, but luckier still, I had both. I love you, Mom. Thank you.
In the midst of caring for my mom in the hospital a couple weeks ago with my 3 siblings, I was able to go home back to Pittsburgh for a short break. And I was binge watching The Real Housewives of Beverly Hills, how one does when their mom is dying. And this one housewife was talking to this other housewife about her mom, and the one said, "I don't know if I ever made my mom proud or happy." And I nearly wept when I heard that, because my mom was dying. And if there's one thing I knew, oh man, I'm losing it already. Whew, okay. And if there's one thing I know it's that I made my mom proud and happy. I know because she showed me 1,000 ways. The way I'll miss the most is how every day when I would call her in the afternoon around 4 or 5, she would answer the phone and she'd say, "Hi, Judy." Just like that. "Hi, Judy." Not always, because some days weren't good days, and I would know that instantly from how she sounded. But most days she'd say, "Hi, Judy," and I'd say, "Hi, Mom," and that unadulterated delight in her voice. Not everybody gets that. It's kind of like winning the lottery. To know just the sound of your voice makes your mom happy. That's a really beautiful thing that she modeled, how to be this person, how to be this kind of mom. It wasn't always that way. We didn't always have a great relationship, but luckily she lived long enough for both of us to grow and evolve, and luckily I found a great therapist. And my mom and I both got to this place over time where we could be easy with each other and enjoy each other. There was a lot to enjoy about my mom. I have this one quote from her. I wrote it down in 2013 when she said it because it was so quintessentially who she was, and it made me laugh. I don't remember what we were talking about, but she said, "You can't sit home and wait for shit to happen." She was probably telling me about her day when she said it. She was always going, always doing, going to the library to get a bunch of books, or her book club, or to the bank to deposit a check and chat with her favorite teller, or to Heinen's, or out with her friends to a movie or a play or a lecture or Fairmont Temple or Costco. No one loved a good Costco run more than she did. Plus, she was always volunteering somewhere as long as she was able, always trying to make a difference somewhere, in the public schools or a hospital, working at the polls on election day, or working for a campaign if it was election season, knocking on doors, making phone calls. We're pretty sure she single-handedly won Ohio for Obama. She was always a citizen of the world, always following the news closely, always caring about the world. We marched on Washington together, my mom and I. It was a march for women's lives in the 90s, I think. I'm not sure when, but it was very fun. And I know it was only because of her that I wanted to go, because she modeled what it looked like to show up for the things you care about, because you can't sit home and wait for shit to happen. To the very end, she continued to show me and my siblings how to live. She spent more than a week in a hospital at the end and was so unfailingly nice to every single person who walked in a room, looking at their badges to catch their name and calling them by name and thanking them. She also talked a lot about her family in the hospital, telling the nurses and the doctors and anyone who'd listen how wonderful her kids are, and her grandkids and her great-grandkids, including the one on the way, Hannah. There was one point when she was talking to a social worker who'd asked her some general question about her life, and she was so happy to talk about her life. Her whole face was smiling, and she said several times she'd had such a good life. And she talked about her kids and her grandkids more, but she also made a point of telling the social worker how all her kids married such wonderful people. She felt so lucky about that. And she talked about her niece, Patty, how Patty was always there for her when she needed her. And she talked about her caregiver, Kenya, who she called her new best friend. And she talked about how she had a wonderful husband who her sister Edith had warned her that she was going to meet, but she shouldn't fall for him. She was 21 at the time, and he was too old for her. He was 33, but she met him and fell for him and married him a few months later. And she and my dad had a great life together. Watching them is how I learned what a loving marriage looks like. Not that they never had fights, because they did, but they always worked it out and treated each other with love and respect. And she talked to the social worker about how she had a wonderful boyfriend, Greg, for the past 7 or so years, who she told the social worker was a very sweet man, very kind, very loving, which was how she always talked about Greg. She loved him and she felt very fortunate to have him in her life. It was a really interesting exercise to listen to my 90-year-old mom sum up her life, to say the least, even as it broke my heart, because she was disappearing. All of this, I knew that was going to get me. All of this is not to say that my mom was some kind of sweet, boring, angelic figure. If you knew her, you know she wasn't that. But she could be pretty sharp-tongued, and it wasn't always a blast to be on the receiving end of that. But honestly, it could be a blast if she wasn't talking about you. Because she was hilarious. No one made me laugh harder. We laughed a lot in my house growing up, and we continued to laugh until the very end. She was funny to the end, holding court in the hospital, making everyone laugh. For better or worse, you never knew what would come out of her mouth next. A couple years ago, she and I were talking on the phone, and I was telling her how I just made cupcakes for some reason, and frosting. And the frosting had turned out really good, and I had a big glob of it left over. And I said to her, I don't know what the hell I'm going to do with it. And she said, without missing a beat, you could spread it on Michael's thighs. And I said, I'll never be able to unhear that. That's the first thing that popped into your head? And she started to laugh so hard the phone was silent. And when she could finally speak through her laughing, she said, don't make me laugh more, I'll wet myself. She made me laugh so hard. She was hilarious and rude and inappropriate in the best possible way. She was a great time. Her friends knew that too. She had wonderful friends who she loved so much. Smart, dynamic women she had so much fun with. Whatever they were doing, playing bridge or going to the theater or birthday lunch, dinner, whatever it was, she loved her friends and she always enjoyed being with them. She loved my dad's friends too. Between her friends and his friends, my mom and dad shared a big world. I want to mention her neighbors, too, in her apartment building, because my siblings and I felt so blessed that she had all these wonderful neighbors who looked after her, who she loved seeing in the lobby and talking to. Her neighbors were always important to her, but especially as her world grew smaller and she didn't get out as much. And I want to give another shout out to Kenya, who held everything together and was so important to her and to me and my siblings, who made the end of her life so much better than it would have been without her. She loved you so much, Kenya. I know you know that, but I'm telling you anyway. Writing a eulogy is hard. I had a long list of other things I would have liked to touch on. How she was a great cook, how she threw great parties, made great pie, how she showed up for me when I had cancer, always with salami, despite how many times I told her I didn't eat meat, which she always ignored. And somehow her salami sandwich was always the exact thing I didn't know I needed. And how she took such amazing care of my dad when he was dying at home, and she never complained, no matter how exhausting that must have been for her. In the end, though, in this case, as in so many other cases throughout my life, I will take my cue from my mom, from how she herself talked about her life to this social worker, and say in sum, it was the people in her life who mattered most to her, her family and her friends above everything, always. It was the love she shared, which I know will carry with us. Even as we miss her, me especially, around 4 in the afternoon when it's time to call Mom. Bye, Mom. I love you. That is all.
What a gift it is being the second son of Ruth and Victor Wertheimer, growing up in the 60s, 70s, and 80s at our home on Shaker Boulevard in Beechwood, Ohio. For all that I have been given and have, I feel great amounts of gratitude to our entire community of family and friends who easily endeared themselves to my mother. I'd like to say a few words about last words. We all had our own last words with Ruth. For some of those last words may have been, for some of you, those last words may have been months ago, when you had no idea those would be your last words with Ruth. Some of you may have spoken with her on the phone sometime in the last few weeks. And if you did, you would have found her remarkably lucid and funny and sweet and kind. She would have told you she wasn't afraid. She was proud. There's no magic to last words. Sometimes it's only a mumble or misunderstood. There were 4 of us present to hear the last 2 words Ruth spoke on earth. Ruth's last words, they were, "Thank you." Her last words were, "Thank you." And she meant that to all of you. So I'll say it one more time. Thank you. Now, as a final note, and to return the favor, on the count of 3, for anyone who wants to say so, say, "Thank you, Ruth." Ready? 1, 2, 3. Thank you, Ruth. Thank you all.
I invite you all to rise for the El Male prayer.
El Male Rachamim Shochei Bamromim Ametzei Menucha Nechona תחת כנפי השכינה עם קדושים וטהורים כזוהר רקיע מזהירים את נשמת רבקה בת שמעון וקלרה שלחה לעולמה בעל הרחמים יסתיריה בסתר כנפיו לעולמים ויצרו החיים את נשמתה Adonai hu nachalata v'tanuach v'shalom al mishkava v'nomar Amen. Compassionate God, Eternal Spirit of the universe, grant perfect rest in your sheltering presence to Ruth Wertheimer, who has entered eternity. O God of mercy, let her find refuge in your eternal presence, and let her soul be bound up in the bond of everlasting life. God is her inheritance. May she rest in peace. And let us say, Amen.
This concludes services. We're going to ask, is everyone going to the cemetery, please turn out your headlights and flashes.